going to cheat. I know this is supposed to be a competition about tall tales, but I'm just going to tell you an anecdote. And you might be annoyed by that, but I have my principles, and I feel that I need to raise your awareness about certain issues. So I'm going to use my position here tonight to do so. A few weeks ago, I was at my cousin's wedding. They're pretty rich. They laid on a coach to get us all back home, and I ended up back at Waterloo Place around 2 a.m. on a Saturday night. I live down in Leith. The N22 had sailed past, so I'd missed that. Walked down a wee bit, got to the taxi rank queue outside the playhouse. It looked long and aggressive, so I decided just to walk home. So I trip-trapped my way down Leith Walk, no bother at all, till I came to what I'm sure anyone who lives in the city will know is now a very familiar sight: massive, great hole in the road. Usual thing, pedestrian walkway, follow the signs, round the bollards. So off I went, round, turn right, walking along, no bother, and then a massive hairy arm came out of a doorway and floored me. It was a troll. Now, this came as no great surprise to me. The way that the council have been churning up our city for years now, in random places, a new place every week, it was just a matter of time before a troll-related incident was going to occur. It hurts me that you're laughing. This one was only about that high, female, and she was in considerable distress, I'll have you know. She'd been crying. Her big, massive clawed paws, they were trembling. Her nostrils were flared with distress. She was clothed, which surprised me. She had on a pair of skin-tight leggings hauled over her hairy haunches, and "Look, don't touch" in glittery writing sort of stretched across her pendulous belly. She'd put them on back to front. And she also had a luminous pink vest top which said "Babe," and she'd half managed to get herself into this. And I realised that she was really quite frightened, and what had happened was she'd been struggling into these clothes when her arm had come out. She hadn't meant to hurt me. In fact, she was cowering. She thought I was going to hurt her. So I did my best to reassure her, calm her down, let her know I meant her no harm, and I asked her what on earth she was doing there. Well, it turns out that this particular type of troll is normally invisible. They can come up and have their fun above ground anytime they want. But having her hole continuously destroyed and disrupted by screaming drills and aggressive diggers, she started off up at Shandwick Place. She'd made her way down through Edinburgh, and the stress, you know how when we get very stressed we sometimes turn red? Well, with this troll, the stress had created visibility. It started slowly, but eventually she ended up completely visible. Stress-induced visibility. She'd done her best to cover herself in mud, and she had cowered in a little corner, waiting for the workmen to leave that night, and then she'd clambered out of the hole, made her way down to Great Junction Street, broken into a shop. The alarm went off, but it's Leith, so it doesn't matter. And she had time to choose some selected items of clothing, had scurried off into a doorway to put them on, and that's when, where we get to. That's where I'd come in. "No, what? Do?" she said. Well, I did my best to calm her down. I said, "Well, have you been above ground before?" She said, "Yes, but only when invisible." I said, "Okay, wait. I live nearby. Let's get you home." Because she was trembling. She was in a right state. So I got her to my house, and I gave her a cup of chamomile tea. She didn't have the manual dexterity for a teacup, so I gave it to her in a saucepan. And I sat her down and I said I'd do my best to help, but would she mind in return just telling me a bit about her life? To be honest, I felt sorry for her. I was quite relieved because I had this tall tales thing coming up and I was short of material, so for me it was a bit difficult. So she told me her name was Esmeralda. She'd been quite a bad troll. Her hobby was farting. It started off, innocent enough. She'd fart underground, and she found it comforting. The smell was comforting and a good source of heat. But she'd found on her ventures above ground, invisible of course, that her farts produced rather amusing reactions in people. And she'd got a little bit malicious with this. She'd get onto a 22 bus on a hot sunny day and fart away. And then, nastier still, she would go to the taxi rank outside the playhouse, and when courting couples got into a taxi, she'd sneak in with them. Serious fartage emitted. And, budding romance is quashed. I felt like chastising her, the love that she may have prevented from ever happening, but I didn't want her to feel censored, and as I said, meeting a troll is gold dust to a storyteller. So that was all fine. But so she said, "Well, look, can I stay here?" And then she farted. Now she didn't have any control over it anymore. It wasn't a choice. It was again induced by stress, and the stench was atrocious. I can handle it, because I live near Leith Links, and we have Seafield sewage works, so I've got used to the smell. But I still didn't want to live with that kind of fume for any length of time. And she said, "Well, can I just stay until the council stop digging things up?" I did my best to gently explain that was never going to happen. I told her that the people of the city, they used to believe it might. She said, "Well, why won't it?" And I said, "Well, we've stopped asking why." It's been many years since we asked. She was silent for a while. All I could hear was the occasional plop of a tear into the saucepan. I did what anybody would do in that situation when you're faced with a problem you can't solve. I Googled it. According to Wikipedia, female trolls have strange powers over human males. They can enchant them and get them to do their bidding. They take them into their powers, have them at their service for as long as they want, until eventually they grow bored, and then they put them back into human world, and they can be found wandering, dazed and confused, with no memory of what's happened on the streets. And I know this to be true, because if you go down to Duke Street any night of the week around 2 a.m. So for that evening, I made her comfortable in my garden sheds, and the next day I went out and bought industrial quantities of imac, and got back, versed her in appropriate chat-up lines. We used all the wax up. We just about got all the hairs off, not quite, but we waxed her. We got her leggings on the right way round, and I gave her some beer money, and I took her down to Duke Street, the Duke's Head pub, right? Just near enough to closing time for people to be drunk enough to not quite know the difference, which isn't that difficult in Duke Street anyway. And I just waited outside the door to Tesco, pretended I was texting, and just waited to watch. And I could see through the window that it didn't take her long to find a mate. Well, they staggered out, and I thought, brilliant, she's found someone, she'll be fine. When he lurched forward and a Vesuvius of vomit erupted from his mouth, bounced off the pavement. Some of it got caught. We'd run out of him before we got to her ankles. Some chunks of it got caught in her ankle hairs. It was horrible. But she still, give her due, she stood there, still game, And then he said the word, Jesus! You can't say that word to a troll. Anything holy is anathema to them. She shrieked and ran all the way back to my house. All I could do was follow. So we sat there, and we had to think what could be done, what on earth could be done. And it was while I was hosing down her legs in the bath, and we both had an epiphany. Seafield sewage works. Mm-hmm. The smell would comfort her, and there's no security, because who'd want to break in? So before the sun came up, we sneaked down to Seafield, we got her in, and that's where she is now, permanently happy. And slowly her invisibility is returning. She's got invisibility in one nostril and both legs and half an eyebrow. And she's going to be fine. But I ask you, what about all the other trolls out there? Start asking, start demanding, start petitioning again. Thank you.